I'm halfway through a lukewarm latte when I hear the ping. Unauthorized license escalation detected. My lips barely twitch. I don't even look up. I just stir the foam. See, they thought I quit. They thought I walked out defeated. But what I actually did was set a countdown. And now I'm sitting here, watching the same men who erased me from the company I built slowly realize they've been running their entire infrastructure on borrowed time. Time I control. Let me tell you how we got here. 6 days ago, I was standing in a glass-walled conference room at Anavis Technologies, a mid-tier tech firm in Richmond trying desperately to play with the big boys in DC. 9 years. That's how long I'd been there, through every merger, migration, and meltdown. I was the architect of their backbone system. They called it Echo. I called it mine, because it was. But when a new director named Colt Beringer came in with a jawline and jargon thick enough to choke a room full of consultants, things changed. Fast. He wore Patagonia like armor and dropped words like Agile's deliverables and microvelocity into every sentence like he was allergic to plain English. Worse, he called me Nins. I never let anyone call me that, not even my mother. Then came the meeting. He laid down the paper like he was handing me a dinner menu. Option 1, take a 30% pay cut. Option 2, leave. And the way he said it, we can replace you by tomorrow. So I looked him dead in the eye, folded the paper slowly, and said, okay, and I walked. But I didn't walk empty-handed. 6 months earlier, I'd started keeping a folder at the bottom of my drawer. A just-in-case file. Inside, notarized documents, legal memos, a quiet little clause from when I restructured our architecture 2 years ago after a near-fatal crash in the customer portal. Amendment 6B buried in legalese. The system is mine, not theirs, not without a renewed license. One that expires the moment I leave. And now, I'd left, you're still with me. Then do me a favor, tap like, subscribe, or drop your city in the comments. Ever been forced out of a job only to outmaneuver the people who underestimated you? I want to hear about it. Now back to the good part. When Colt waltzed into the next board meeting with a deck full of my diagrams, now color-coded and renamed Hypernova 3.0, I was already watching from across town. He had the gall to say he'd reduced deployment time by 48%, without understanding a single config dependency. Meanwhile, I was sipping sangria on the back patio of a wine bar with a new client. Then came the crash. A soft one at first, a permissions sync failure, then a billing API bug, then the terminal alert. Instance VQ Core 07, unauthorized execution blocked. The room was too quiet for a Monday, the kind of quiet that prickles your skin before a storm. I knew what was coming the second Colt asked to catch up in the conference room with a fake smile and a fake spreadsheet he hadn't even opened. I sat down anyway. In my usual blazer, my usual flats, hair pulled back like I was prepping for battle. Because I was. Across from me sat Colt Beringer, a man whose qualifications included being loud in meetings and having an MBA from somewhere you only hear about on LinkedIn. He laced his fingers behind his head like he was posing for a stock photo of Team Synergy and hit me with it. Nins, he began, strike one. I'm gonna be real with you. They always say that right before they lie. We've been looking at overhead, right? Trying to stay lean, keep velocity tight, and well, he flipped a single sheet of paper toward me like he was doing me a favor. You're punching above your budget. He gave me 2 options. Option 1, stay, but with a 30% pay cut. Option 2, walk, and then the kicker, he actually shrugged and said, we can replace you by tomorrow. I didn't flinch, didn't blink. Just picked up the paper like it was a dinner receipt and said, okay. He leaned forward. Wait, okay, like you'll think about it. No, I said, standing. Okay, like I'll walk. And I did. No tears, no yelling. Just silence and the click of my heels as I walked past HR's slack-jawed silence and into the hallway like a queen who just burned the palace down. I got texts before I even hit the parking lot. Wait, you left. Julia from backend, what the hell just happened? Dan in QA, tell me you spit in his latte. Carla from DevOps, but I didn't respond. I had something more important waiting for me. A tiny flash drive, a manila envelope, and a clause no one at Anavis Tech ever bothered to read. Amendment 6B. In the event of voluntary separation, license to any non-core framework authored solely by said architect shall terminate unless renegotiated in writing. Translation, The moment I left, they lost the rights to Echo, the backbone of their infrastructure, every module, every permission protocol, every container. Mine. Later that night, I sat in my kitchen in Richmond with a glass of wine and my cat, Django, purring on the windowsill. I watched as the deployment logs started blinking red. They'd already attempted a push. They thought Echo was theirs. They thought wrong. They always say hindsight is 20/20. But looking back, the red flags weren't just visible, they were practically glowing. Like the first time Colt forgot to loop me in on a planning meeting with the board. Or when HR suddenly asked me to start weekly impact summaries for transparency. Or when Neil, our CEO, walked past my desk and called me Nora. My name is Nina. Nina Vargas. 9 years with this company, and suddenly I was a ghost in my own building. But I stayed quiet, because I wasn't done building. Not yet. You know how you survive in tech as a Latina engineer with no Stanford sweatshirt and no rich uncle backing your ideas. You learn to play quiet. You learn to document everything. So that's what I did. I had receipts, email trails, notarized copies of my contracts, and deep surgical knowledge of a system that looked simple on the surface but was wrapped in layers of conditional logic only I could trace. They called it Echo, but Echo was never a system. It was a language, my language, one they never bothered to learn. I didn't leave Anavis Tech like someone walking out of a job. I exited like a silent detonation, timed, coded, clean. And they didn't even know it yet. While they were high-fiving over their upcoming Series C raise, I was sitting in a lawyer's office above a wine bar downtown. Her name was Darla Whitlock, and she looked like the kind of woman who could shut down a courtroom with a single raised brow. She flipped through my file and said, "They're going to panic." I nodded. "That's the point." She tapped one page with her manicured nail. "This clause alone, the license termination, if they deploy with this architecture live, they'll be in breach." I already knew. And I was already watching the logs. They had no clue that the system they were prepping to launch was legally ice water, frozen and untouchable. Meanwhile, inside Anavis HQ, the panic was quietly beginning. The logs showed a failed container spin-up, then a mismatched API token error, then an admin dashboard timing out. Colt blamed the intern. He always did. He stood in front of the floor like some wannabe tech guru, spewing phrases like fail upward and iterate fast, while Lana from infrastructure nearly burst into tears trying to explain why the system was rejecting root access. I watched from the cafe patio across the street, sipped my coffee, didn't even smile, not yet, and then came the text from Mara. "Lexarian Systems is hiring. You free for lunch?" Lexarian, one of Anavis Tech's loudest rivals. Same field, bigger budget, better leadership. I replied with 2 words, "Let's talk." Back inside Anavis, things were unraveling faster than a cheap cable knit. They were inside a live demo with one of their biggest investors when the permissions layer froze mid-login. And still, Colt swaggered on. He used my work as a backdrop, pretending he'd built it all, renamed every module, color-coded the architecture in his favorite shade of startup blue. No attribution, no footnotes, no credit. But he'd made one critical mistake. He forgot that the architect was watching. Colt Beringer strutted into that boardroom like a man about to sell the future. He had his hair slicked, blazer pressed, and that arrogant glint in his eye like he'd just discovered electricity. The screen behind him glowed with my system, rebadged, rebranded, and relabeled, Hypernova 3.0. Only problem? Hypernova was really just Echo wrapped in Colt's favorite buzzwords and zero comprehension. I wasn't there, of course, but I didn't need to be. Because every time they spun up a new instance without proper authentication, I got a ping. Unauthorized schema patch. Instance VQ Core 07 blocked. Each alert was a reminder. They didn't own Echo anymore, and they were already running it illegally. Colt launched into his pitch with the grace of a second-rate TED talker. "This system has reduced deploy time by 48%, uptime at 99.98%, cost cut by half. Why? Because we built smarter, faster, leaner." Behind him, my diagrams, my protocols, my exact architecture. He didn't even bother changing the variable names. And then came the moment. A knock at the boardroom door. Everyone turned. In walked Harold Singh, legal counsel since before the company upgraded from fax machines. No folder, no laptop, just one piece of paper slightly crumpled, and the kind of look that made grown men sweat through tailored suits. Neil, the CEO, frowned. "Harold, something wrong?" Harold didn't answer Colt. He didn't even look at him. Instead, he turned to the board. "There's a clause embedded in the framework you're discussing today," he said, calmly unfolding the document. Clause 2, subsection A of the Architect's Employment Amendment. License to the proprietary framework shall terminate upon voluntary separation unless renegotiated in writing. The room went silent. You could hear a pen cap click, maybe even Colt's blood pressure spike. Harold continued, unfazed. "The architect Nina Vargas voluntarily separated 6 days ago. There is no license. Therefore, this system is currently operating in breach." Colt stammered. "Wait," she quit. "She didn't, I mean that clause that can't still be valid." Neil turned slowly. "You let her quit," Colt blinked. I didn't think she didn't fight it, she just left." "Exactly," Harold said. "She didn't fight. Because she didn't need to." Another investor on Zoom closed his laptop. One started muting himself mid-meeting. The rest, frozen, their million-dollar futures slipping through their fingers like vapor. Harold turned to Neil. "If we can't renegotiate access within 48 hours, the framework will begin to degrade. One module at a time, it's embedded." Colt dropped the clicker. It hit the floor with a hollow clack, echoing like a gunshot. No one moved. "You let her walk out," Neil whispered. "With the system." Across the city, I got another ping. "Admin escalation attempt denied." I didn't even need to touch the code. I'd built it to respond to arrogance automatically. Part 4. The begging begins by the time the third investor ghosted, and the QA dashboard started blinking like a slot machine in Vegas. Colt's confidence had fully collapsed. At Anavis Tech, the situation was now being described in Slack channels with phrases like critical degradation and unauthorized protocol paralysis. Translation: they broke the system and no one knew how to fix it. And me, I was barefoot on the balcony of a short-term rental with ocean views and silence money can't buy. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Virginia area code. I let it ring 5 times before I answered. "Nina Vargas." There was a pause. Then the strained voice of a man who just realized the house he built was sitting on quicksand. "This is Grant Feldman, General Counsel for Anavis Tech. We'd like to discuss reinstating a temporary license for the Echo framework." I let the silence settle. I could hear his jaw clench. "You're asking," I finally said, "to license back the system your team claimed to build?" "Yes," he replied, almost a whisper. "I'm in talks with Lexarian and CoreLogic, 2 of their competitors, both with deeper pockets and better reputations." "We understand," Grant said carefully. "We're prepared to offer compensation." I tapped my fingers on the table. "Triple minimum plus full IP attribution. And exclusive consulting rights moving forward." His breath hitched. "That's a significant increase." "So is the damage you're currently mitigating," I said. "I assume you've already informed the board the system has entered lockdown." More silence. Then finally, "We'd like to make a formal bid." I nodded, though he couldn't see me. "You'll get my terms by end of day. You have until 10 a.m. tomorrow. After that, the offer doubles." I hung up. No goodbye, no hard feelings. Just business. The way they liked it, until it wasn't in their favor. Back at Anavis HQ, Colt looked like a man aged 10 years in 10 minutes. His hair, meticulously styled every morning, now clung to his forehead in damp defeat. He sat in Neil's office, hands trembling, muttering, "I thought she was bluffing." Neil didn't even look up. He was staring out the window, watching the sunset fade behind a glass skyline built on borrowed code. "You didn't just lose an engineer," he said. "You lost the only person who ever knew how to hold this place together." Let me know when you're ready for part 5. The final move, where the full revenge hits, the deal closes, and the final twist brings it all home. This is the one you don't want to miss. I sent the contract at 9:57 a.m. 3 minutes before their deadline. It wasn't a negotiation. It was a verdict: triple licensing fee, retroactive attribution, consultation retainer, plus a non-compete clause preventing Colt from touching another system in my field for 5 years. I knew they'd sign. And I knew it would hurt. By 10:11 a.m., the signed documents hit my inbox. By 10:12 a.m., the funds cleared. Colt Beringer, whose career had floated on buzzwords and PowerPoints, was now legally bound to silence. His name erased from the system architecture. Mine restored in bold across every dashboard and module. But I wasn't done. A week later, Anavis Tech released a press statement. We've renewed our partnership with former lead architect Nina Vargas to ensure continuity and integrity across Echo. No mention of the meltdown. No mention of Colt. But I had something better. I had the final meeting. Lexarian Systems invited me to their Richmond headquarters, polished floors, quiet offices, respect in every corner. They handed me a signing bonus, a glass-walled office with ocean artwork, and the one thing Anavis never gave me, credit. And just before I left the building that first day, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Colt. I just wanted to say you really had this plan the whole time." I stared at the screen, then typed back one word. "Yep," blocked the number. And the last twist, Anavis's Series C round collapsed. Two of the investors pulled out. A competitor leaked the framework breach. Their valuation tanked by 42% in 1 week. Colt resigned quietly. Neil gave a public statement about engineering misalignment. And me. I stood on the rooftop of my new office, sipping cold, sparkling water with lime, watching the sunset across the James River. I didn't smile out of spite. I smiled because they finally understood I never quit. I exited on my terms. And I took the whole damn system with me. Thanks for sticking through the fire, friend. If you've ever been underestimated, erased, or told you were replaceable, drop your city in the comments and tell me your comeback story. And if you loved this twisty revenge tale, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, make your old boss sweat.